I welcome you to this evening's program. My name is Will Takish. I'm a librarian at the Albany Public Library. I'd like to start tonight by doing a land acknowledgement. Um, the Albany Public Library is situated on the land of the Mohawk Haudenosaunee and the Stockbridge Munsee Band of Mohicans. The Adirondack Experience is situated on the Aboriginal territories of the Mohawk and Abenaki communities. Indigenous people continue to live in our two regions and practice their teachings and lifeways. Tonight's program features Chef Kevin McCarthy and students from the Culinary and Hospitality Program at Paul Smith's College, the College of the Adirondacks. We learn about several different techniques to transform a variety of mushrooms into unique and flavorful dishes that can be recreated in anyone's home kitchen. Chef Kevin is a native of Sylvan Beach in Oneida County and a graduate of the Culinary Institute of America. He previously worked as an executive chef at the Point Restaurant in Upper Saranac Lake and was the executive chef at Lake Placid Lodge. He is an associate professor at Paul Smith College, a certified executive chef, and a certified culinary educator through the American Culinary Federation. So with that, Chef Kevin, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Paul Smith College. So today we're going to work with mushrooms. So we're going to try and share with you 5 or 6 different techniques. We're not so much big on recipes, but techniques and ratios. So we're going to talk a little bit about the mushrooms that we're going to use. So you can see these. So we're going to use oyster mushrooms today. If I can get it so you can see. These are beautiful oysters. We have some maitake mushrooms. Okay, maitake in Japanese means a dancing mushroom. Historically, when they would find them in the woods, they said that they would start to do a dance. So I thought that would make sense for today's show. Keep us excited. We have portobello mushrooms. And then we also have some oak log shiitakes. So in the restaurant, I want to make sure that this is things that can translate to your house. So a lot of times we'll buy mushrooms and we'll go through and we'll clean them. And when we clean them, for the portobellos, we'll pop the stem off. We'll go underneath and we'll cut the gills off. Just because that makes it a little bit more presentable and a little bit easier to use. These gills tend to turn everything a dark black. And you'll see how that comes into play later. But we clean all of our mushrooms and we save all of the scraps. So when we clean these maitakes, just cut them off the base. Try and use as much as possible. But you do end up having some trim. Okay? Same thing with the portobellos. We don't throw any of that away, so we save that. All right. Oyster mushrooms, we'll cut the base off. We'll use this bottom as well as our trim. And then normally we try and use them as far down until it gets so woody that you really can't just break it off. We'll try and keep as much intact as we can. Okay, so that's kind of an example. When we clean them. So I work in a restaurant. I have the opportunity to buy a lot of mushrooms at one time, and we have a lot of different mushroom trim. If this is something you're going to reproduce in your house, sometimes you'll see at the grocery store the button mushrooms. I think yesterday I saw them. They're 2 for $5, or sometimes when they're about to expire, they'll have a big sale on them. So rather than having all of the scraps, you can just buy white button mushrooms for this application. All right. So here, first thing we're going to make is mushroom stock. All right. We make chicken stock. We make beef stock. We also make mushroom stock. Plant-based cuisine is very important with our students, and it's important to me because it challenges me. But we're going to use 60% mushroom trim or white mushrooms. I have some white mushrooms in here. We're going to use the rest 40% celery, onions, garlic, and fresh thyme. All right. We're going to take that big stock pot. All right. I have a lot here. You can minimize it in your household for whatever that you need. I was saying before, it's all ratios. Okay, we're going to put all this in our pot. So you can see it spilled about a third to a halfway up. I'm only gonna put enough water in here to cover it, plus an inch or two. And then I'm gonna put it on the stove. I'm gonna bring it up to a boil, and we're gonna simmer that for 90 minutes. And I made some earlier today, so I'm gonna show you what the end result looks like. But you're really not gonna find a more fragrant stock than your own mushroom stock. If you prefer to add chicken stock or something like that, that works well too. You can buy the Swiss Nord chicken stock from the grocery store or something like that if that helps in your household. I prefer to keep it plant-based, and I use straight up water. So earlier today, I don't know if you can pan that down a little bit, Bryce. You can see here, this is pretty much black, all right? And that's a lot of it's from the gills of the portobello mushrooms. But I took the same amount of stock that I just made, and I reduced it right to here, and I have this intensely flavorful stock. We'll make this in the restaurant. We'll freeze it in quart containers, keep it in the freezer, pull it out when we need it. We use it in a couple different applications, but the first one that we're going to do is we're going to do a reverse styled custard. This is something I consider it to be a little bit more elegant or gourmet, but it's super easy to make in your house, and it's a great trick. When your friends come over, they're kind of like, ooh, this is great. It's not hard to make, so I'm going to show you that one. So first way to cook the mushrooms, we have the stock. Now we're going to talk about how we're going to use the stock. So I have a little tool. You can also just crack the top off, but this just helps me to crack the eggs a little bit. These you can get on Amazon, 20 bucks, no problem. What that does, it makes, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but it makes a very small indentation, all right? That indentation, I can take the end of my paring knife, I can very gently get that in there, okay? And now I'm able to remove the top of the egg in a clean form. This egg I'm going to keep. Okay, my ratio for this recipe or this formula is 2 eggs per 1 cup of mushroom stock, and the mushroom stock needs to be cold. All right. So this is my first egg. I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it in a bowl of water, and I'll show you how we clean it after. Second egg. This one's going to go in our bowl. My cup of mushroom stock from earlier already mixed. Put that in there. Now I call this a reverse custard because traditionally a custard is some sort of flavoring, cream and egg. We're not going to add any cream yet to this part. So this is basically just going to set this stock and we're going to steam it. And once this is all set, I'm going to put it back in my container. In here we have the eggs, and this is the show part. It's really not that hard to do this, but it's what I think makes people go, wow, that's kind of cool. Inside, there's a thin layer of skin that's attached to the egg. You're just going to put it in the water, and you're going to take your finger, and you're just going to rub around the top until it comes loose. And in here I have a pre-cut egg container where I put a little bit of tin foil on the bottom, and then we're going to put our eggs right into there. Now we're going to take our custard. We have our egg holder. I'm going to fill them 3/4 of the way up. Now I have to make a steamer. In the restaurant, we have steamers we can use. If I do this in my house, and I've done this a number of times for private parties and other people's houses, take a regular pot. I'm going to put a towel in the bottom. I'm going to put 2 inches of water, just so that it creates a little bit of steam. All right. Then I'm going to take my custard, not custard yet, but I have the tin foil on the bottom. That makes it so that it won't fall apart. I'm going to set this in here. I'm going to put it back on the stove on medium heat with a lid. And this is going to take 8 to 9 minutes to steam all the way through, just so that it's set. And then once it's set, we're going to put it in the fridge and let it chill. So as that's cooking, we'll come back to that one later. Now we're going to talk about another application. So now we have all of our different clean mushrooms. Sometimes some people believe in keeping just one mushroom on its own and not mixing any mushrooms together. Maitake mushrooms are very, very strong and very potent. So in this dish, we're going to make a ragu with a little bit of puff pastry, and we are going to mix 3 types of mushrooms: the oyster mushrooms, the maitakes, and the shiitake. So when we cook them, we're going to get a hot pan, a small amount of oil at the bottom. While we're waiting for that to come up to temperature, this is a little bit of puff pastry. We have full sheets, and we're going to talk about how we make a boule au vent. It's going to be the holder for our mushroom ragu. It's important that your pan is nice and hot. If it's not smoking hot, once the mushrooms go in there, they're a lot like a sponge, and they're going to suck up all that oil. Some people, if I'm in my house cooking too, sometimes if I have very moist mushrooms, or not super watery, but they have a good moisture content, I'll put them directly in a dry, non-stick skillet, and eventually that water will get drawn out, and you don't have to put any oil in there, and you get a nice crispy mushroom. These ones are a little bit dry, so I have to add a touch of oil just to help them sizzle. So I'm going to start. That's it. I'm gonna let those sit and start to cook. Let's pan it this way now. So now we're gonna work on our puff pastry. So we have sheets of puff pastry. You can buy this in the grocery store out like this. We're gonna make some circular ones today. I have cutters. You can also make square ones. So I'm going to cut 2 circles. Smaller cutter, I'm going to cut the second one out so that I have a lid. You can kind of see I have kind of like the donut holes and then the actual donut. All right. Small amount of egg wash. I mean small amount. We're not going to make an omelet on here. What we're going to do is we're going to just brush the top. Each one. Mushrooms are doing all right. All right. We haven't added any salt yet because salt helps to take out the moisture. We want them to start to crisp up just a little bit. Now I'm going to take my lid, very gently going to put it on top. I'm going to press it down so that they stick together. Go ahead and add salt to those paste, please. Then I'm going to go back and I'm going to score the top. The last score. These are going to be our capsules that are going to hold our mushroom ragu later. These, because puff pastry is full of butter, we're going to refrigerate again till they're totally cold. Then we're going to cook them in a 400-degree oven for 10 to 12 minutes. Okay, so here we basically cooked our mushrooms down, ate, seasoned them with salt. There's a couple different things that we can do now. We're also going to make mushroom spring rolls. So for the mixture for the mushroom spring rolls, I'll cook mushrooms. I cooked shiitake mushrooms earlier. We'll cook them in the same exact method, but we'll stop here. All right. And when I stop here, I still have a lot of meat on the mushroom. They're still intact. They still have, like, when you bite into them, they're toothsome. I'm going to take this mixture and I'm going to cool it down. And then I'm going to show you how we're going to roll it into a spring roll. All right. And I put one aside. This is one that I made earlier at the same time. So we'll come back to that. For the ragu, now we're going to add a little bit of flavor to it. So these mushrooms are cooked nicely. I'm going to push them all to one side. Go back on the heat, but only the half that doesn't have mushrooms in there. I'm going to add a touch more oil. Small amount of butter. Okay, the mushrooms aren't cooking, but I'll be able to mix all of this in on this side. A little bit of diced Vidalia onion. Add a small amount of garlic. And we're just going to cook this through until it's transparent on this side of the pan. You can see not burning. Mushrooms are still safe on that side. And I'm not like the water from the mushrooms isn't just drowning or boiling the onion and the garlic. It gets a chance to actually cook, and you can hear the smell that you can't smell it with you, but here we can smell the aromatics, and it's just about ready to go. Now, bring it all back together. There's a pond on the bottom of the pan from browning the mushrooms. We're going to go back to our mushroom stock, which is our helper. And I'm going to go maybe 2-3 ounces just to deglaze the bottom. We're going to turn that on low heat. We're going to let that simmer till it reduces by about half. All right, while that's cooking, our puff pastries chill, 400-degree oven. Somebody will set a timer for 8 to 10 minutes, hopefully, and we won't burn. Now we're going to look at making mushroom spring rolls, okay? So like I said, if I was to take those mushrooms out, or at least half of them out before that, stop that cooking process, I want a dry mushroom filling, okay? This is dry. I've added a little bit of green onions in here. You can add sesame oil, a little bit of soy sauce if you like. You can add other vegetables in here, but because it's about mushrooms today, I kept it at just mushrooms, all right? There's a company called Adventures in Food. They're based out of Albany. I can share their phone number with you at the end. They have a lot of different specialty products, but the one that I find that makes the best spring rolls is it's called Feuille de Brick, all right? Or it's also known as Shaper Crate. This stuff is awesome for deep frying. It has a very thin texture. It stands up to heavy cooking, and it has a great crunch when you cook it. So we're gonna make our spring rolls. Mise en place, we need to have egg wash. We need to have our cooled mushroom mixture. We need to have our crepes. Okay, once these are rolled, we'll be able to check our custards. So like I said, this stuff is great. It's thinner than any crepe. I can make it all. I mean, it's like paper thin, okay? So we're gonna take our first one, we're gonna put it down on our surface. We're gonna egg wash the whole thing. Enough to moisten it up. We're gonna go back and we're gonna take our second one. So the egg is pretty much our glue. Now we're going to go ahead and we'll egg wash that top one. This gives us plenty of surface area. We'll do this one for cocktails, canapes, appetizers at the restaurant. We're doing an event called Taste of the Adirondacks in May where we have to feed 100, 125 people. We're going to do the same mushroom spring rolls because we can freeze them, we can transport them and just pan fry them when we get there, slice them, and it's super easy to do. So we have our mushroom mixture. We're going to go straight in the center, a little bit lower than the center. We're going to try and make it in the shape of a log. See that, Bryce? Okay, about so much. I have about 3 inches, 2.5 inches on each side. Enough mushrooms here. Okay, so now I'm going to roll it up. So basically, I'm going to push over the first part, and I'm going to pull it back to be as tight as I can, and then I'm going to fold it over. Okay, now it's kind of like when you do a Christmas present, and you try and get the perfect sides on the box. We got to roll this side in, so that it lines up with a straight line here. We're going to roll this side in so that it lines up with a straight line here. Okay, now we have to come back with some more egg wash because it's not egg washed on the back side. Technically, you know, you could cook your mushroom mixture. I could have cooked it yesterday and then decided to make my spring rolls today, and then I could put them in the freezer and they'll last anywhere 4 to 5 months in the freezer. So this doesn't have to all be done in one day. If you want to do it for a dinner party, it's the same thing with the egg custards that we're making. All of this can be done way in advance, and it's something that you can do so that it makes it look like you're in the kitchen all day, but you want to make sure your spring roll stands straight up like this, so it's nice and firm, all right? How we doing with time, Rich? The reason it's the third, okay. So I made another one earlier, so we have 2 spring rolls. These can easily be pan fried in the small amount of oil on all 4 sides, or if you have a small fryer at your house, you can just simply deep fry them. We're going to deep fry these today just because of the applications that we have. Another thing we're going to do before we go into our next part is we're going to make some pickled mushrooms. So, Peyton, you want to explain pickled mushrooms? We'll let Peyton. Peyton is a senior here at Paul Smith. I'm going to let him explain the process for the pickled mushrooms, what he did and how he did it.
Yeah. Okay. So for pickling mushrooms, I mean it's a very basic thing, but it's very versatile. It'll preserve them to last forever. So it's definitely something that you want to do. So we have these little baby ones right here. So these are the ones that we actually pickled today. They're a little smaller, a little easier to manage, a little easier to get done. And pickle them, you don't really need much. You only need some vinegar, you need some salt, sugar. You can use apple cider vinegar, you can use red wine vinegar, you can use white vinegar, anything that you have in your kitchen, anything that's laying around. Just mix it together, bring it over, put it in a pot, and you got yourself a little bit of pickling brine. You let that go for like 5-10 minutes. Bring it up to like a simmer, cook it down a little bit. And then all you do is you just pour them right down on your mushrooms. You let them steep, and you got something that looks like this. You have little mushrooms.
How long should they steep in that hot liquid?
So I normally go for a few hours at least, but if you leave them overnight, that is definitely the best. That's optimal if you could do that. But nothing's too complicated with that one.
So last thing we're going to share before we start to put these dishes together. These are some other shiitake mushrooms. You can see we've julienne these super thin. These we're going to deep fry so that they have a textural component to one of our dishes. One of my favorite things to eat is deep fried shiitake mushrooms and deep fried capers. Goes well with beer. It's a different combination, but the salt and just the earthiness of the mushroom, they go very well together.
T minus 2 minutes on the pump cake, please. T minus 2 minutes for the pump cake.
Now we're going to talk about our steamed eggs. Okay, I'll pull this out. Stays together, and you can see that custard is set. All right, and it's almost like silky pudding. It's like mushroom pudding. I'm going to add the whipped cream or cream to it after, but I have to now chill these down. So they got to at least go in the fridge for about an hour. These are the ones I made earlier. You can see that kind of shiny custard in there, but this is nice and set. It's a very soft, silky texture. This is one of the things that we're going to serve. I got to check the puff pastry. Almost. Okay, not quite. Got to get a little bit more brown. Our mixture, most of that stock has been absorbed. Okay, So now, because this is what's gonna go with the puff pastry, I'm gonna add roughly 2 ounces of heavy cream. Now I'm gonna reduce that by half again. Talk about presentation for our eggs. You can use any sort of vessel that you want. If you have egg cups, like for the morning breakfast, hard-boiled eggs, that's fine. Espresso cups. But what I did is I filled it with salt. All right, you fill them with salt, and that helps the eggs stick in there. It's a nice presentation. And I'm going to take these two. Take 2 of my nice eggs. I'm going to spin this directly in there so it sits straight up. I have to add the cream part for the custard. This is straight up whipped cream, just regular cream that I whipped by hand. And then I seasoned it with soy sauce and a little bit of white truffle oil. You can get white truffle oil at Nori's. You can get it. It's a very common, very popular thing nowadays. Or you can just season it with salt if you want. I find soy sauce goes much better with the mushrooms. I think it's earthy, tastes a little bit better. So all I'm going to do now, that's our cream component to our egg. And like I said, all of this can be done in advance. It's not too hard, but it does kind of have a wow effect if you are having friends over, something different like that. Peyton's a great backup. I also have to give Bryce credit who's doing the camera. These are the fried shiitake mushrooms for texture. So if I serve this in a restaurant, we'll put this on a little platter. I'll put the spoon right in there. We'll put a couple of fried shiitakes on top. Okay, and that's one dish that you might see here at Paul Smith's, or you can do it in your house as well.
Less than 30 seconds for the puff pastry.
Okay, puff pastry's cooked. And I have to do some things in advance. I made some earlier today, but what you're going to do, I have a couple that are already done. Have our pastry. This is going to be our holder, so I'm going to go and just break through the top part of that pastry. Because as it cooks, it creates a lot of different layers in there, and on the inside, it's a hollow. Okay. I have 2 of these. So here's our mixture. You can finish this with any herb that you want. Tarragon goes great with mushrooms. Basil goes great with mushrooms, chives. I'm just a little simple green onion. Okay, I'm going to check the flavor at the last minute just to make sure that it tastes right. lot of people ask me why I don't use a lot of cracked black pepper. I'm not a big fan of black pepper. I find that it's overpowering. Certain things do need black pepper, but I don't find that this is one of them. So we're gonna have our holder here in the center. I'm gonna put a little bit of mushroom on the bottom as our base. Kind of like, you know, you have bread with your mushroom mix. This is acting as the bread. So I'm gonna set this on top, and I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna start to fill that crevice up with all these tasty mushrooms. Bryce, I made enough that you can eat dinner today. Okay, this is all there. We'll take a little bit of the extra liquid. That's gonna go around the outside, and on the inside. Have our lid. Put that on top. So that's a version of something else you might get either in the restaurant, but again, that's very easy. You can make it at your house. There's really not a lot of work to it. So our last one, I have to give credit to Wild Pork Farm, which is located in Keene Valley. I went to Nori's this morning. I needed some salad to go along with this, so I purchased this one. Pretty awesome stuff, so I wanted to make sure I give them credit. Take just a small touch of their greens. Time is the price.
6 minutes to 45.
A little bit of salt, a little bit of olive oil. Okay, I'm gonna mix that up. Set that aside. These things are great. I mean, it's like a great egg roll, right? Pretty hot, but you can see they're rock hard, super crunchy. Okay, very great way you can use them. Whether it's for cocktails and canapes, whether it's for an appetizer, you can use it as a component on a main dish. Doesn't just have to be mushrooms in there. You can do vegetables as long as they're dry. I wouldn't put cucumbers in here, but you can put zucchini, squash, cabbage if it's cooked in advance. You can add different meat products like braised beef, or a lot of times we'll do a duck confit and mushroom spring roll. When we cook this or cut this, okay, so obviously we put it on a draining pan, drain off all of the fat. Okay. We're going to get rid of the two ends. I'm going to show you two ways. So if we were going to serve it as an appetizer, cut it like that. Then I'm going to cut a large space here. Okay, so that when that stands, I know what's in there. Okay, put that on the plate. Okay, I don't do these justice, but these are actual capers. You take them out of the brine. You deep fry them until they stop bubbling. It's the best. It's better than nuts and beer, but these have a great salty brininess. I'm going to mix these with a little bit of the fried shiitake mushrooms. Okay, and again, these are going to go on top of that salad. Then we're going to add a couple of our pickled mushrooms. So this is another presentation or something that you can do with mushrooms in your house. So just a quick recap, okay? Mushroom stock, that's a ratio. You want roughly 60% mushroom product. It could be the ones that are on sale at the grocery store, the white button ones, or if you're lucky enough to have enough mushroom trim or mushroom scraps, then you'll use those. I would never use shiitake caps or oyster mushrooms for stock. It's just a waste. It's too much. This is such a great product to eat. But if you can get the trim or the button mushrooms, that's fine. The ratio is 60% mushroom product, 40% mirepoix plus garlic plus thyme. That's covered with cold water, simmered for 90 minutes. You strain all that out, reduce it by half. You have a fantastic stock, which you can use in many different ways. You can use it in the custard, which we made here. The ratio for the custard is 2 whole eggs to 1 cup of stock or broth. You can do it with chicken broth if you want. You can do it multiple different ways. It doesn't just have to be the mushroom broth. That's steamed over medium heat with a lid for 8 to 10 minutes until it just sets. Then you chill that, flavor whatever whipped cream you want. So if you want to make like a tarragon whipped cream with a chicken stock base, those flavors go together as well. And then you can do that inside the egg. A lot of this is about the presentation because, you know, if somebody comes out and this is the first thing that they get put down or that's a canapé, they're kind of like, ooh, wow, that's kind of cool. And the spoon's in there and then they get to eat it. So there's that one. Next one is the mushroom spring rolls, all right? So we have the technique where we start with a very hot pan. We'll add just a small amount of oil. Mushrooms go in, they start to brown. Once they're cooked, we're going to see, not cooked, but once they start to break down and release their liquid, we're going to add a little bit of salt so that they have flavor. At that point in time, that's when we remove them for the spring roll, all right? And then we cool them. You can add whatever herbs. I could add seaweed to that if I wanted. I could add cooked cabbage to that if I wanted. And I roll it up. Remember, it's the Feel the Brick or Shape of Crepe. This comes from Adventures in Food in Albany. Great product. Egg wash, we're going to roll that up nice and tight. We can have a large presentation, or if you have a cocktail party, this, I can get usually 4 to 6 portions out of it, depending on what I want to do. But it's all bite size. You want to make sure you cut it with a serrated knife. But in the restaurant business, if I can get 5 or 6 from one of these, it makes doing a party of 100 people much easier. You want to spice them up, you could add a little bit of sriracha or some sort of a dipping sauce with them. But in all honesty, it tastes pretty good on their own, but that's another way you can do those in their bite size. So that's another vehicle for those. Our puff pastry, we talked about that. You can buy that at the grocery store. It's in the freezer section. You thaw it out. Somebody was texting me telling me I was doing a bad job. You can thaw it out. You cut it. You're going to egg wash it. And you have to put the barrier on top. Don't forget, you have to put it back into the refrigerator because it's almost all butter. Once it's set and firm, 400-degree oven, 10 to 12 minutes. You cut out the top, and then you have this fantastic vessel. You don't have to just put mushrooms in here. You can put other vegetables in there. You can put a little potato puree on the bottom. Basically, it's chicken pot pie. You could put a chicken pot pie mixture if you want. It's just a different way of cooking it. That mixture that we made, so we kept going after we took it from the point where we took some out for the spring rolls. We moved all the mushrooms off to the side so they weren't cooking. And on the opposite side, we browned a little bit of onion, a little bit of garlic until it became aromatic. Then we brought the mushrooms back into it, deglazed our pan with a little bit of mushroom stock, reduced that by half, added a little bit of cream, reduced that, and then we are good to go. Right? So I think that's all of the presentations that we have today. This would probably be a good time for any questions or something along those lines.
Great. Kevin and Peyton and Bryce, thank you so much. I think all of us watching are incredibly hungry right now. Everything looks just fabulous. We have a couple of questions about the mushrooms themselves, and people are wondering where you got the mushrooms that you used tonight.
So the company that I said, Adventures in Food, they carry a whole line of mushrooms, and they have wild mushrooms available as well. Most of the mushrooms that I purchased come from them. Also, because we're at Paul Smith College, we can order from bigger food companies like US Foods, but they do have a consumer division where you can order directly from Adventure in Food, and they will actually, if you're in their area, they'll drop it off with their truck or they will ship it to you. I also get mushrooms at Nori's. They usually have a great variety of mushrooms. Green Goddess usually has some good mushrooms. The guys at Juniper Hill, sometimes they are growing quite a few different mushrooms. Just depends on if they have them or not. That's where I usually get most of the mushrooms.
Okay, great, wonderful. And somebody had a question about, is there a difference in cooking with mushrooms that are foraged in the wild or versus farm-raised mushrooms?
Yeah, there's a huge difference. So the ones that are foraged in the wild, you have to make sure that you're adventurous and you don't mind to eat a little bit of dirt or a couple pine needles. You have to remember wild mushrooms are, they're a great thing. And even though we want to find them and eat them, so do the bugs. And a lot of times bugs will start to get in them. So number one, these mushrooms, only thing that I'll do, like these domesticated ones are the ones that I buy, there's no real dirt on them. There's nothing on there that's bad. I'll make sure that there's nothing on there, but these are grown in a pretty sterile environment. The ones coming from the woods or that are foraged, you have to make sure you go through them and look for bugs, pine needles, dirt. A lot of times it's terrible to wash mushrooms because they suck all the water up like a sponge. But sometimes you have to wash them out, or if they're infested with a lot of different bugs, a lot of times we'll soak them in salted ice water. That will help to remove any of the larvae or anything that's in there. And then we'll put them in a salad spinner, and that will remove all that water so that we have a dry mushroom. But, you know, eating a foraged product, you have to be willing, you know, you might eat a bug, you might eat a pine needle, you might have a little crunch from dirt. There's nothing wrong with that, but.
All right, great. And then I'm going to try to go in order of the dishes that you made. So we do have a question about the stock, and is it okay to put the vegetables into boiling water, or should you definitely start the water off cold?
I start with cold water just because it starts to bring everything up to temperature, and as it warms up, it starts to release all of its juices and water content. If you just put everything into boiling water, it kind of shocks it immediately, and it doesn't bring out all those flavors. I don't know if you put me in a blindfold and I tasted two stocks side by side that I would be able to tell the difference, but that's how I learned, and that's kind of how I've always stuck with it.
Wonderful, thank you. And then for those very fancy eggs that you made, what was the name of the tool that you used to cut the top off again?
It's called an egg topper. And quite honestly, you can just take, you can literally, if you don't want to buy one of those, you can take the back of your knife and you can just, like that, make a small indentation and then very gently work your way around, pop that top off, and you don't have to spend the 20 bucks. All right. But it's not always that easy. And in the restaurant, when I'm making these, we're making 50 at a time. So if you're making 6 or 8, you could easily do it on your own. But the tool called an egg topper. So it's here. If you go on the website of jdprints.com or even Amazon to their cooking section, this is what it looks like. Real simple, usually 20 bucks or less. Great party trick. Invite people over, put a little flour on your face. Seems like you've been working hard all day.
Excellent. And also with the eggs, and I have to say, I have never seen or heard of savory whipped cream before, so I think that's really interesting, and I can't wait to try some. And someone is wondering, if you were to make an herbed whipped cream, would you simmer the herbs in the cream first and then let the cream chill and whip? No.
No, because fresh herbs taste the best because they're fresh. If you cook them, that's going to force them to release all their oils, and it's going to change the fresh flavor. So it's not going to be fresh herbs anymore. So if you're going to put herbs in whipped cream, in my opinion, your best bet is you whip your cream, then you're going to chop your herbs, and immediately when you're done chopping them, you're going to put them right into that cream because all those oils are going to come out in there, and it's going to be a fresh flavor. With savory whipped cream, you can also add lemon zest. Take a microplane and put lemon zest in there. That tastes fantastic. If you think about cream soups, you can make, we do butternut squash soup and we put an apple garnish in there. We'll make a maple cream and put just a little dollop in there. And kind of like when you get hot cocoa, when they put the cream on top and it starts to kind of melt. With soups, that's what we do a lot with savory whipped cream too. So there's a lot of different applications to it.
That's great. Thank you. And then we'll move on to the puff pastry piece. Someone's wondering if the puff pastry sheets are 1 layer thick.
Yeah, so they all come layered, so they'll come in a sheet. The ones you buy in the grocery store, they're folded up, so you have to kind of unfold them, and then it's like 1 square sheet that you'll get. If you feel that it's too thick, sometimes if they're thick, you can roll it out slightly with a rolling pin, and then you can work with it from there. But it comes in a sheet, not a block.
All right, great, wonderful, thank you. And someone is wondering what is in the egg wash.
Egg wash, it's just straight eggs and a little bit of water to loosen it up a little bit. Again, there's 9 ways to skin a cat. Everybody tell all our students the right way to do something is the way that your chef tells you to do it. But there's a lot of different ways that people do it. I prefer just to add a little bit of water to loosen it up. Some people, my wife, she says she has to have milk in there. Other people put a little bit of cream. A little bit of water. That's all that's in there is whole eggs and just a couple drops of water to loosen it up so that I can spread it.
All right, great, wonderful. And with the ragu, someone mentioned that it looked like you didn't stir in the cream. And is there any reason that you didn't stir it in?
I probably didn't get to that point.
All right, great, thanks.
I swirled it a little bit, maybe. You want to make sure that you swirl it in and incorporate it for sure.
Okay, great, wonderful. And then we had a couple of questions about the pickled mushrooms. And if you could just review for us what is in the pickling brine.
Pickling brine. So the pickling brine, that has a little bit of water, about probably a cup or so of vinegar of your choice, and then about maybe a couple tablespoons of sugar and salt, and then you just taste it until you're going to get a little bit of an acidity in there. It'll be a little sweet, a little salty, and once you hit about the level that you're looking for, then you can just kind of go for it.
Okay, and then Peyton, actually someone was also wondering how soon do you have to use the pickled mushrooms?
So those last over weeks. Yeah, exactly. Those last a long time. Those can be there for weeks.
Okay.
Weeks upon weeks.
I like pickled beets. Man, you could stick them in your fridge and they'll be in there forever.
All right, great. Thank you, Peyton. All right, it looks like we've answered all of our questions. So I just want to again say thank you to Chef Kevin and Peyton and also Bryce, who was working the camera and did a wonderful job. So thanks for sharing all these great recipes and techniques with us. I'd also like to thank Will at the Albany Public Library for collaborating with us on the DACKS Dishes programs. And you can check out the Albany Public Library programs in the link in the chat. Then I also just want to let people, hey Bryce, let people know that we do have a couple more Zoom programs coming up related to our Artisan Inspiration series. So on April 10th, we will have a sneak peek at the featured collection. That's a program with our chief curator, Laura Rice, who will give a virtual tour of the artists and artwork that will be featured in Artisan Inspiration. And there is a link in the chat for registering. And then on May 15th, we will have a virtual sneak peek with Adirondack Experience staff and the members of the project construction crew for a behind the scenes look at the exhibit space. And we'll pop a link in there as well. And then I'd like to invite everybody to come to the museum on Saturday, August 19th. We're going to be continuing the mushroom love with our Mushroom Mania Festival. And that's going to be a full day of presentations, displays, guided walks, and more. So a lot more to teach people about mushrooms and get people to learn a little bit more about mushrooms and how you can use them. So there's a link for that program as well. And again, I just want to say thank you to Kevin, Peyton, Bryce, and Will for the program tonight, and for everyone for joining us. And we hope to see you at some future programs. Thank you and have a good night.
Bye. Thank you.